guys, how you doing? Yes, my name is Kathura Kimathi and welcome to my channel, Learn Maths with Kathu. So today I'd like us to talk about the different types of fractions that we have in maths. Okay, so in our last lesson I introduced this topic, fractions. So today I'd like us to go a bit deeper. So how many types of fractions do we have? So the first type is what we call like fractions. Like fractions are fractions which have the same number as the denominator, okay? So the good thing with like fractions is that you can compare fractions quite easily. That is, you can tell which fraction is smaller or larger when you look at two like fractions, okay? So some examples of like fractions are, okay, so these are some of the examples of the like fractions we have. So these are said to be like fractions because they have the same denominator, okay? They have the same numbers as the denominator, okay? So in this example, for instance, you can easily tell which fraction is bigger than the other, or better yet, you can easily arrange these fractions in ascending or descending order because you're only focusing on the numerators, okay? And if you know how numbers follow each other on a number line, you can easily arrange like fractions in order, okay? So if you want to arrange these fractions in ascending order, for instance, we'll have ascending order is basically arranging them from the smallest to the largest, okay? So here we are basically only arranging the numerators in order because the denominators are all the same, okay? So another type of fractions is the unlike fraction. So now that we've talked about like fractions, it only makes sense that we should also talk about unlike fractions. So for unlike fractions, there are numbers, these are numbers that are not the same. Okay, these are numbers that are not the same. So unlike fractions, have different numerators and different denominators, okay? So for unlike fractions, so some examples of unlike fractions would be, so we can start by listing the examples. So these are some of the examples of the unlike fractions. So when you look at this set, you can clearly see that the denominators are all different, okay? So that means that it's impossible to arrange these fractions in order without making sure that they have the same denominator, okay? So we'll get into that when we go through the lesson on comparing fractions. Let's not digress. So another type of fractions is what we call equivalent fractions. So you can get equivalent fractions by simplifying fractions, okay? So they're like factors. How do I explain this? So if you divide or multiply both the denominator and numerator with a similar number, you get equivalent fractions, okay? So when you treat the numerator and the denominator the same, you get what we call equivalent numbers, okay? So what you do to the numerator, you do the same thing to the denominator, okay? So for example, 2 over 3 is equivalent to 4 over 6. And why am I saying that? I'm saying that because when we multiply 2 by 2, which is the numerator, we get 4. And when we multiply 3, which is the denominator, by 2, we get 6. So when you multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same number, we get an equivalent fraction, okay? Okay, so 18 over 24 is also equivalent to 9 over 12. Because when you divide 18 by 2, you get 9, and when we divide 24 by 2, we get 12. That's why we are saying that 18 over 24 is equivalent to 9 over 12. And we can also say that 9 over 12 is equivalent to 3 over 4, okay? Because when you divide 9 by 3, you get 3, and when you divide 12 by 3, by the same number 3, you get 4, all right? So this is what you do to the numerator. You should do the same thing to the denominator kind of thing, okay? So those are what we call equivalent fractions. And by the way, if you don't know what a numerator and the denominator is, I introduced this concept in our last lesson. I'll leave the link to the playlist on fractions on the description box below so that you are all on the same page. So another type of fractions is unit fractions. Unit fractions are another type of fractions. So unit fractions are basically fractions that have the same value for the numerator, okay? So anytime you see a 1 in the numerator, you should automatically know that you're dealing with unit fractions. So some examples of unit fractions are, so fractions that have 1 as the numerator, okay? Then we have something called proper fractions. So proper fractions are the fractions that are always less than 1. So when the denominator is larger than the numerator, we refer to that as a proper fraction, okay? So the number at the bottom, which is what you call the denominator, always has to be larger than the top number, which is the numerator, okay? So some examples would be, so the denominators are larger than the numerator, okay? So we have another type of fractions called improper fractions. So improper fractions are the opposite of proper fractions. First of all, improper fractions are always greater than 1, okay? And this is because unlike having larger denominators than numerators, as is the case with proper fractions, improper fractions have smaller denominators than numerators, okay? So anytime you look at a fraction and you notice that the denominator is smaller than the numerator, you should automatically know that you're looking at improper fractions, okay? So some examples include, so the denominators are smaller than the numerators, okay? So the last type of fractions that I'd like us to talk about today is what we call mixed numbers. And mixed numbers, just like improper fractions, are always greater than 1. So mixed numbers, just like the name suggests, mixed is a fraction that has a combination of a proper fraction and a whole number, okay? And you need to be very careful here. I'm talking about proper fractions and not improper fractions, okay? So an example would be 2 4/9. So in this number, 2 is the whole number and 4/9 is the proper fraction, okay? So another example would be, so 15 is the whole number and 6/7 is the proper fraction, okay? So those are the different types of fractions that we have in maths. We can now call it a day, okay? Additionally, I'd like to mention that I offer tutoring services. So if you're interested in getting tutored, please make sure you fill out the Google form that I've included in the description box of this video, as well as in all my other videos. I'll reach out to you as soon as possible, okay? So if you enjoyed the lesson, feel free to like, share, because sharing is caring, and subscribe so that you don't miss any time I upload a new video. Subscribing is free, yay! See you in 2 weeks' time, same time.